to what I think is episode 10 of the Ask podcast. Apologies for any previous mistakes on that. And we're here for our EPQ special today, which means we've got 4 guests. You are so lucky. And hopefully we will be attaining lots of secret knowledge with them today. Just to remind you, I am Jenny Summers, the Deputy Head of English and Drama at John Hampden Grammar School. Just clarify that from last time.
Not grammar, Mum.
Not grammar. I do, I'm quite happy with grammar, otherwise Sir might fire me. But yes, absolutely, it's not part of my job title. And Sir?
And I am Mark Till, and I'm the Head of English and Drama, which we're going to start doing more of, at John Hampden. And we have big news. There is a winner.
What?
Whoa, already?
Of the clue hunting.
You're joking.
But it is Mrs. Templing.
What?
Of course.
Now,
it's
Mrs. Templing
That's
Mrs. Templing is a knowing sort. Mrs. Templing, unsurprisingly, only took 2 clues to unravel the mystery, and has very kindly said that she will not accept the prize, but we'll wait till a student solves the mystery. So students have to prove that they are a little tiny bit less clever than Mrs. Templing. There'll be a 3rd clue at some point today.
Oh, I thought you were going to give it to us now, so I thought you were going to just change it up a bit. Oh,
Can't spoil it that.
Okay, fine. No, we'll have the clue right now, shall we?
Go for it.
Okay, 3rd clue is Tony.
Tony.
Toni.
Okay, I should stop thinking about that now and actually get on with the podcast.
Tony. 3rd clue.
This is... I'm
Big prize. Email your solutions, or, attempted solutions. To one of us.
I'm sure they're going to do a great job. And as I said, we've got 4 amazing guests today to talk about their EPQs, their extended project qualifications. And I'm going to start, I think, with Tom, and he's going to tell us what the title is of his EPQ.
Are we introducing ourselves as well?
Yes, please.
Okay. I'm Tom. I've been on 3 of the podcasts, so go and listen to them first. Since the last podcast, they've promoted me. I'm now Deputy Head Boy in charge of PR. And my EPQ is titled, Regarding the Current State of Dark Matter Research, Are We Wasting Our Time and Money?
It's a really light, easy topic that anyone can get their head around. I'm sure you agree. And Matthew?
I'm Matthew. Nothing really special about me other than I'm a student at John Hampden. And my EPQ is titled, To What Extent Are Rollercoasters Safe?
I should just say, there is a lot special about Matthew. He beat Teo in some exams. That on his own.
in physics and chemistry.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
Something definitely special about you. Sorry, Teo, if you're listening.
Not be happy.
And Shane.
Yeah, I'm Shane. I am incredibly special. My EPQ is assessing the value of Shakespeare through the help of 3 different subcontexts: its position in the secondary school curriculum and whether it should stay there.
Absolutely. And he is in my English literature class, and he is fantastic. And also, we have the fantastic Reuben.
Yep, so I'm Reuben. This is my first podcast, so I'm really looking forward to this. I'm also Deputy Head Boy. I'm in charge of the Men in Black team. And my EPQ was on the 2008 financial crisis, and it was titled, With the Benefit of Hindsight, to what extent could the 2008 financial crisis have been foreseen and avoided?
My goodness.
Quite a
topics.
big one there, yeah.
Big topics, sir. We thought we'd begin with a kind of elevator pitch. So we've got 4 very different topics here. What makes yours the one we really need to know about? What makes it fascinating? What made you pick it? Etc. Give us a bit of an overview. We're going to give you 1 minute only to do that. Good luck.
Okay, well, we'll start with that. My EPQ regards dark matter, which is the biggest mystery in modern physics, as billed by most physics professors. And it's not just about dark matter, but it's more about the way scientists think and the way we fund things in science. So I believe at the moment the way we fund sort of new projects in science needs to change a little bit, and the way we assume things in science need to change a little bit. So my project is not just unique because dark matter, wow, but because it looks deeper into the way that scientists think and fund. I've got like 20 seconds left. So it effectively looks at A, is the theory correct behind dark matter? B, is the things we're using with that theory right? Are they the right money to be spending? Are they too expensive? Environmental concerns, etc., etc., etc. So it's a bit of everything, but it looks primarily at the sort of current state of dark matter research in physics.
Fair enough.
Right, Shane, you're going to start a timer.
Oh, wow, we're going that official.
Oh, okay. So I just chose mine a bit less intense than Tom's, but I just really like roller coasters, and I thought I wanted to see how dangerous my hobby was. So I just looked into accident rates and the spread of the different types of accidents and their causes, and just found that they're pretty safe, to be honest.
Phew.
I mean,
relief for all
that's
of us.
really it to it.
You
to
have
it.
to get a company to disclose
Oh,
some
yeah, no, I
information
did.
to you
I
as
got,
well.
Ooh.
NDA from IAPA, which are very big in the roller coaster world. None of you probably ever heard of them, but you know.
roller coaster world.
Esteemed.
You did well there. That was definitely under a minute. Brilliant.
Yeah, quicker than you, Tom.
I'm going to lead my pitch with one word, and that is accessibility. No one knows about dark matter, but there's one thing that everyone has to do, one thing in life, one constant, and that is Shakespeare. And, you know, sometimes you have to look at it and wonder if Shakespeare is really necessary. I certainly did. I've convinced myself since that it is entirely necessary. Still, you know, haven't decided if that was because I was taking A-level English that I tried to convince myself that I liked Shakespeare or not. But, you know, I think it was important.
Stockholm syndrome.
Yes, I think there is a lot of that going on, especially with the EPQ. So I was assessing the position of Shakespeare through, as I said, 3 different subcontexts: cultural, linguistic, and cognitive. And I think it's, you know, it's an interesting read. You get to see the assessment of something that has been so long-standing in a curriculum and has held such an esteemed position in a curriculum. I don't think there's many topics or parts of a curriculum that can say that. And accessibility. No one likes dark matter.
I think also the interesting part about your EPQ is because there was another EPQ this year that did Shakespeare, but you looked at a big sort of cognitive level of it.
Yes.
I remember reading the bit in like P600 neurons and stuff.
I'm not
which,
going to pretend I understand that.
but the idea that there is more than just Shakespeare bad because we can't relate, that which was an argument put forward in the other one. But it's I guess that's what makes it unique.
Yes, so I would like to say mine is also an interesting read, but it is quite dull. But no, so I think the reason I want to do mine on the financial crisis is because I'm interested in going into economics or finance as a future career and do economics at university. And so it was just something where I thought it would be really beneficial to kind of go beyond the curriculum, that sort of thing. And yeah, that was really it. I guess I also take financial studies at AS level, so that kind of helped to tie in with that as well. So yeah, so it's just, and I think it's also quite a topical kind of topic because obviously with the current recession we're in, the kind of the economy doing weird things. I think it's good to have, I think we can learn from the mistakes and the lessons learned and hopefully move forward.
Passing over to you, sir. I don't know why I'm making the assumption that you've got
So
some
what
wonderful.
I've done. I'm such an imposter. I'm sitting here having done no EPQ. This is, shall I start by questioning, and then we'll try and move the focus around the different ones. So our outcome is going to be whose is really the most interesting through how we deal with being under questioning. I'm going to start with Reuben, with yours. Devil's advocate, isn't economics actually a pretend science where we can't
Pushing the
be
Teo
sure,
narrative.
even more than theoretical dark matter? We can pretend that we can learn from economic history, but really, is it scientific enough to have that level of predictability, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good point. And before I did A-level economics, I was definitely on the same kind of wavelength as you, a kind of a non-believer. But no, once having
I believe that economics exist. I'm just not sure that can you derive accurate predictions from things?
Yes, yeah. So I think it's the same with anything really. I think if you look at the past with history generally, I think it's important to see how far we've come and how there are it's quite a cyclical structure in terms of our economics, in terms of our history. And so I think it is important to use the mistakes, the failures we might have made or experienced in order to move forward. And yeah, while I do understand that some people probably don't see how we can use our past, because obviously it's a very different time now, I still think that there is value in looking back and using that kind of our past, we can move forward.
Did you conclude that it should have been avoided?
No, so I concluded that
What's
it
your
should. It was difficult to have been avoided, but it could have been foreseen. However, I think the warning signs that allowed it to have been foreseen came quite late, and so at that point it was difficult for it to have been avoided.
So for our other panellists, Reuben has quite a strong claim to having the most practical EPQ, because if we could avoid another financial crash, surely that would have the most human benefit, and so he should win because that's very important.
I'd like to counter that I mean, it's probably worth also just putting out the question there. I mean, the one I asked at your EPQ is, will we actually learn from this? Because you look at, the Great Depression, you look at and then the 2008 recession, it seems like we've not learned anything from anything. But no, I think I'd like to counter that with the fact that there's a huge environmental cost with my subjects, especially with the changing state of the way we use physics and medicine. But also the idea that should dark matter follow a thermal model and we stop innovating, we stop engineering based on that concept, then we actually lose out on a whole lot of effectively free energy for the world. So it's quite utopian, but my EPQ sort of looks at the topics that the way future civilization might work.
Tom, for the benefit of our listener, the listener that we have out there, who might not know what
I realise I've used quite a bit of jargon already.
Who might not know what dark matter is, can you give us dark matter in 10 seconds?
Wow.
Space don't look how it is. It's pretty much how, that is effectively dark matter. What you can see is not necessarily what's there.
Is it a hypothetical construct to try and solve problems currently in physics?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Yes, it started like that. Yes, that was basically, in short, scientists noticed galaxies spin too fast. They break physics. But no, because of the things we've observed the things that have been observed in space only follow a pattern that dark matter would create in the simplest way. When I showed you that big photo of the bullet cluster, the only way we can explain that at the moment is dark matter. But it's implied. It's implied, but hasn't been physically detected yet. But that's also technically part of the nature of it.
Gotcha.
We can't interact.
So when you talk about researching dark matter, you mean the scientific enterprise to try and
prove
it beyond just implying.
To discover dark matter. To discover dark matter, to say this here is dark matter. I know it is here.
Yeah.
And then use that matter to make energy in the simplest way possible.
Matthew, why do you like rollercoasters so much?
Bit of a simple question, just a hobby.
How many have you been on, and how many times?
To be honest, I used to hate them. Only recently, right before COVID, I went to Thorpe Park and absolutely loved it. Bit of a plug for Merlin here, but I absolutely loved it, and I was planning to go over the summer to many more, but then COVID, so I couldn't. But I've been to Thorpe Park a couple times. That's really it. I call myself an enthusiast, but I'm hardly an enthusiast.
It's a fairly new enthusiasm.
Yeah.
Okay. Shane, did you used to hate Shakespeare?
Of course.
as much as Matthew used to dislike rollercoasters, do you think?
Definitely.
Were you scared of Shakespeare in the same way?
I'm sure I
Aren't we all?
You open the first page and the words aren't in the right order. The characters are some crazy Italian family wanting to kill each other and poisoning each other. It's not an inviting prospect to suddenly walk into a secondary school and you get Romeo and Juliet, and you watch the TV version or you watch the film version with Leonardo DiCaprio and you go, what a nice story, what an attractive man. And then you read the book and you don't have Leonardo DiCaprio in it. You have the words on the page. And I think at the time it takes those sort of 4 or 5 years before A-level to appreciate what has been done and what you are gaining from these stories, these books, these plays. And I think that's really what I wanted to investigate, because it was only as I was doing A-level English that I began to appreciate that Shakespeare is so much more than I think students give it credit for. It's this bogeyman of literature that is impenetrable and so difficult to comprehend unless you're performing it dramatically. And that is how I viewed it. But, this EPQ, it enabled me to research further into it, look at how the dramatism of Shakespeare can influence your intake of the words that you would just read on a page, and how that links to cognitive impact and obviously the cultural importance of Shakespeare, how deep-rooted he is now in UK history, the images around us, but also, and I'm a big linguist, I'm a fan of sort of how language changes, and Shakespeare, he's a massive innovator of his time. In where we now have strict grammar rules, Shakespeare doesn't care. He doesn't care where words are meant to be. He is using what he thinks fits, and I think that is something we have lost now.
It's difficult to explain to Year 7s why they have to spell their own name correctly when you teach them that Shakespeare didn't really have an agreed way of spelling his own name. Like, well, hang on, you're pretty strict on when we spell things, and you have to say, yeah, we have spellings now. You have to spell things now. I think that a lot of them sympathise with Shakespeare.
After reading your EPQ, Shane, I thought I was really fascinated by the idea that you talked about the swapping of verbs and nouns and how they're so fluid, and even parts of speech that Shakespeare was willing to mess about with. I was wondering if you could talk about that in a little bit more detail, because that was something that appealed to me, perhaps, as English teacher.
So what it's called in linguistics is it's a functional shift. And Shakespeare, oftentimes, I think he was using a noun as a verb. So he would say, instead of how we might say something reddens something, that I think could potentially stem from Shakespeare going, he would just put the noun in where the verb would be. There was no care for what grammatical class the word belonged to. It was just, I know what I want to say, I know what word fulfills that meaning, so I'm just going to throw it in there and hope it's understood, because that's the thing. They are performed as plays. So the words that the actors are saying, as long as, the gesticulation and the performance is all correct, the words that they are saying don't necessarily have to be, every word doesn't have to be analysed by the audience. It's the play as a whole, it's the scene as a whole. And I think that's such an underrated part of Shakespeare's, works. It's difficult to analyse each word because he doesn't always stick to those templates, is what they're called, where you have, X, verb, X. He will put a noun in there and the meaning is still carried through. So I think I refer to it as the semantic meaning is carried even though the grammatical sense is not there. And it's something so unique to Shakespeare.
I think the really good example you used for that functional shift in your work is he would companion me.
Thank you for finding that, because I could not remember that.
I like that bit
rather
too.
than he would accompany me.
Yes, that's
but it's still, especially, I've been doing an opera workshop all morning. We've been talking about it, the idea that just because you can't understand the words that are being said, it doesn't mean you can't understand, that someone's been shot or that someone's fallen out with someone else.
That's like the beauty of plays and movies. Well, more plays and theatre. You don't need to know the exact word. You can kind of see it before your eyes, and I think that is really the essence of Shakespeare.
So are we agreeing that Shane has the best EPQ?
Yeah, I was going to say, it sounds like you're conceding to Shane right now.
I feel we need to know, Matthew, how safe are roller coasters?
Well, firstly, I don't think Shane's the most important. I didn't really like English.
Wow.
All right, man.
After the personal attack, Rollercoasters. So I basically went through and talking about the NDA earlier from IAPA. They release data to their members, not to the public, of roller coaster accidents and rates of those accidents. And I basically looked at the serious injury rate per million rides, so per every trip around the roller coaster. And then compared that with, so I got data from the Department of Transport, who had data on other types of transport, obviously. So like cars, cycling, trains and planes, and calculated accident rates on those different types of transport. And then I basically found that roller coasters had 0.02 serious injury per million rides, and something like cycling had 3.78 injuries per million rides, serious injuries per million rides. And it was to the point where roller coasters were so low that it was even lower than aviation in that raw number. Granted, a trip on a plane for an hour or so is going to be a lot longer than a 5-minute roller coaster ride. But even if I think I couldn't look into it because there wasn't enough data, but I think even if you could account for the length, it's so that number could maybe be above like aviation, but it wouldn't be up to the point where it's above cycling and unsafe at that point. So it was just so low that they're really safe, basically.
I think.
Does that match people's perception? Do people perceive roller coasters
No.
to be really dangerous? Because people like
Yeah.
pretending that they are because it makes it more exciting to go on them. But do you think there is actually a perception that they're dangerous?
So yes, I definitely do, because I also I talked about the distribution of accidents earlier, and how I had data sets which looked at the distribution of accident types. So like what caused the accident, like was it someone being silly and putting their 4-year-old child on a ride where you have to be over 6 foot to get on, something like that.
Quite a ride.
Yeah,
That's
it's
very
very
exclusive,
That's
right?
what I mean when I use the word silly.
But so it was looking at those really causes of and I had one data set which was from official streams of reporting, such as through trade bodies and governmental data in the US. So granted, not the UK, but and then I also had one which just looked at the 10 reported incidents each year in the media, and then I basically compared the accident causes of both of them, and found that for the causes of the more media-based source, it was the accident type causes were a lot more shocking. So you'd have a lot more detachment and derailment and collisions, whereas actually, in actual fact, from the less media-based one, it was only about half of accidents are caused by something going wrong with the roller coaster. The other half are caused by people being silly or being idiots or having a health-related issue which isn't related to the roller coaster on it, like a problem with their diabetes midway around a loop-the-loop or something like that. There was one which I enjoyed.
Enjoying serious
Be careful
injury.
the sort of accident data you release as well.
No, this is in the public one, but there's one where some guy halfway around a loop-loop got hit in the face by a duck. Yeah, so
Was the duck all right?
I couldn't tell you, but he got cut on his face from it and had to go to hospital.
Well,
We don't care about the man,
Yeah.
we care about the
Yeah.
duck,
Yeah.
darn you.
I have a feeling it may be what happens like when you just shoot a pigeon. I'm not gonna lie. If you're going that fast.
Wow.
The person who shouted duck to him was right in 2 senses as well. That's what I like about that.
The interesting part about yours as well is the whole finding out that almost all of the accidents that happen are human based, that people are the causes of
Yeah,
the
no,
problem.
I wouldn't say almost all. It's about half. So half of accidents are caused by a passenger error, not even necessarily operator error. Surely, granted, the operator could have spotted that they didn't put their seatbelt down. But if you're going on a multi-ton machine which goes around, flying around in the nearby theme park, you're gonna want to put that over that bar over you and make sure you don't fall out.
Does Mrs. Summers not like roller coasters?
I
saw Mrs. Summers squirming while we
used
were
to
saying
love
this.
them, but since I've had a child, I don't know why there's something about it.
Boo.
The stomach,
For
stomach
me,
sunset.
because I want to be alive for my child, and
Yes.
the idea of her going on them when she's older. It's
But
just
Matthew's
horribly.
EPQ would say you should
Yes,
be more worried
yes,
about.
it should be fine.
You
Math-
should be more worried
No,
about
that's
bicycles.
true.
You should
About
be
all-
over 10
Yeah.
times more worried about driving to school than getting on that
Thanks.
roller coaster.
And also, she's not doing any cycling
if you go on
whatsoever.
that, if you go on
That's
that
out.
bike, you're over 60 times more likely to die.
Wow.
But the numbers are still incredibly small, aren't they?
Yes.
This is what,
So it's three.
the things you have to
points.
do when you present percentages and probability, I guess, is
Yeah.
make that relative to.
That is, unless you're cycling in London.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Unless you're cycling in London when it's like 25.
Wow.
Can I bring Reuben in? I've got a link here.
Okay.
Is it true to say that actually the economy has more ups and downs than a roller coaster?
Oh,
Wow.
That's good.
And that the
That's a very
booms
nice,
and
yeah.
busts and the recessions and the high points, that they're built in? Isn't that just the system we have? That we have boom and bust, we pretend that it can be in equilibrium, it can't, we have a boom and bust system, deal with it.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point to say. I think the kind of inherent thing about the economy and the market is that it's not going to be stable, no matter how people wish that it was stable. I guess people in kind of like the housing market and with their savings, they want it to be good for them, or just good in general. But that's never going to happen. I think Gordon Brown, when he was in the government, he was saying kind of like no return to boom and bust, this kind of thing. But that is, I think it's inevitable, really, because I mean, if you look right now with coronavirus, who saw that coming? I mean, there's no one could have foreseen that having the effect that it had on the global economy.
Other than that Bill Gates talk from 4 years ago that got recommended me to the other day called "We're Not Prepared for a Pandemic."
Oh.
But no, yeah, so that's
something.
yeah, I think it is very much like a roller coaster. Going back to your analogy, it is very much like a roller coaster in that you don't really know what's going to happen next, I guess, unless you go on the roller coaster multiple times. You don't really know what's coming up. You don't know what's ahead in the near future or the long term. And
Could be a duck.
it could be a duck indeed, yeah.
Could always be.
But your EPQ said that people should have been.
They should have been able to.
For this
Yeah.
time, there were indications. What were the indications that were so obvious that the 2008 crash was going to happen for you? Why should people have foreseen it?
So I think at that time, the US housing... So I focus more on the USA, I should probably mention at this point, because this is obviously where it culminated, this is where it started. And I think the US housing bubble was a big root or a big determinant of what was going to happen, what was approaching. You saw a massive inflation in house prices compared to median household incomes, which shows that there was a massive divergence between the actual price and the value of housing. Also, there was a big subprime mortgage failure. So people who could not feasibly repay these loans were getting, or these mortgages were being granted loans when they shouldn't have been, because by the banks and the lenders, because they didn't have the ability to at the end of the day. So I think actually there were two. So there's a person called Dean Baker and Robert Schiller, and they actually both authored books, and who they were able to foresee an impending crisis. I think they both authored them at least 2-3 years in advance. So these were people who they're not like big senior positions at the big banks, but these are economists who are using their own knowledge, using the data, which was widely available to the US population, and they were applying that to what was potentially coming.
And from my understanding of reading what you've written, I'm not an economist by any stretch of the imagination. Part of the problem was the system didn't incentivize good behaviour. That was my understanding. Has that changed? Did you find that out in the course of your EPQ? Have we changed regulations and so on? Have we made that situation any better, or are we heading straight back down that path?
Yeah, well, it's quite a gloomy prospect. But no, so what I found with mine is that you had the people in the senior positions were they had no incentive because their pay was determined, their bonuses was determined on how much they could sell. And I think at I talked about how there should have been increased regulation on the various economic agents involved in it. And I think this did happen towards the end. Obviously, this was more looking in the future, how this potential new crises could be avoided. And so I think, yes, there was more regulation put in place. But if something like that happens again, where it's kind of the systematic risk is built in from within the economy rather than an external, like the current COVID recession, it's always difficult because you don't know where the next issue might be brewing or where it might be coming from. You don't know how to prepare for it, really.
I mean, this is very lightly tangentially related. I'm just thinking about, you talked about that it might be a source, Tom, of future energy. Is there any sense of, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but is there any danger involved in investigating dark matter and so on? Could we be interfering with something that we don't understand that could have some kind of awful repercussions, as seems to be the thing with human beings as a general rule?
Well, there was this big discussion when the Large Hadron Collider was built, that when the Large Hadron Collider collided atoms, that it would create black holes, end of the world. But actually, the nice thing about dark matter is that because of the way it is, the only thing it can do is change the way gravity behaves around things. And because of the amount of energy we can get from unit dark matter, in my theoretical Tom unit of dark matter, the amount of energy you can get out of a single dark matter unit is much larger than the effect that dark matter has on the things around it. So I think ultimately, unless we build a source of energy that or a way we extract energy from it that is unsustainable or dangerous or will create a black hole to destroy the entire universe, amen, I think ultimately there isn't a huge danger. And the nice thing is that it isn't like fossil fuel. If we start using it as a fuel, if we can use it as a fuel, where we end up sort of running out of it because of the way it is effectively.
Do you have faith, Tom, that dark matter exists?
No, absolutely not. I was at a talk with a professor at the Large Hadron Collider, quite a senior professor at the Large Hadron Collider, and she's now proved twice over that the theory in her PhD dissertation is absolutely wrong. I think the only thing we're finding at the moment is that dark matter can't be found anywhere. I have faith that there is something causing the behaviour up there. I also have faith that whatever's happening is probably something that will likely remain unsolved. I have very little faith in a future where we are using perhaps dark energy, but that's even more of a mystery. Dark matter, no. I don't have faith. And I think that's my whole project came to the idea of this 10-year ultimatum, where if in the next 10 years we find we haven't found anything, it's where we basically have to go, are we taking the right approach to this?
Wow, gloomy.
You say though that there were like offshoot developments.
Oh, of course there are offshoot developments. I mean, you look at the Large Hadron Collider. That's led to the development of the internet. The sheer improvement in the precision of technology because of these projects has improved, but it improves everywhere else in physics too. Whenever you look for something new.
Do you think it's like that life advice that people give, that if you're not sure what you want to do, you ought to just go out and explore?
Yes, I think the danger is with modern science is that we lose. It's coming back again. This appeared in the first podcast, but it's coming back again. We lose the ability to explore. We've already I think the last living freelance scientist lives in like Dover or something. But the idea is that now as a scientist, you are a physicist. You look at one tiny bit of physics, and in the grand scheme of things, your research contributes to one flow into the almighty physics river. Where actually, you look at the guy who invented microwaves, who were there to defrost hamsters in laboratories, fun fact. He also did work with DNA. He also did work with like laser physics. He was an all-round guy, and all of his inventions form part of his portfolio. But ultimately, he wasn't a physicist; he was a scientist. And I think we're losing the exploration in favour of going very far down one track.
Okay, I'm going to make a link. So we're talking about exploration and wonder. I'm coming to you, Shane. So to what extent is Shane? Stop making that face at me. Does Shakespeare for you provoke a sense of wonder? Is it a journey of exploration for you when you're looking into Shakespeare? And perhaps even you could give us some examples, if that's not too much to ask.
No. I don't think Shakespeare is something of wonder, because you can look back at it, you can read it, but I think ultimately, I said it in my EPQ, I said Shakespeare is becoming outdated. The stories will remain timeless in the abstract way, but there has to come a point where the language change has been so much, the historical change is so different that you have to, put it down to rest and let it lie there, and you can smile at it, but don't open it again.
It's probably not going to surprise you that I don't agree with you at all.
I can understand that, and I think it's not a current thing. I think it is still useful currently. But, maybe by the time dark matter is found, we can kill Shakespeare.
He's already dead.
Brave to two English teachers.
Yeah, you picked the wrong environment to disagree with Shakespeare.
I mean, we've only got about 1 minute, so I need to round off in a sec. But I have to say, I disagree with you because I think he fundamentally is able to talk about what it means to be human in a way that no other writer has ever.
Who said that? Was Harold Bloom was talking about
Yes, who you wrote about.
Shakespeare's
and I don't think he was
invention of
hyperbolic,
personality.
as you said.
I think, Shakespeare stands. If we're going to bring it to the current environment, Shakespeare stands were ever present in history, and we've got to take a step back and look at it. Look at dark matter research. Look at Rollercoasters. Look at Shakespeare. Ignore finance because no one likes economics. Look at them.
Mr. Bill's brain is going to find you
watching
and do
berth
things.
and acknowledge that all of these things are part of our lives, but we should just ignore some of them.
Wow.
That's my conclusion.
I'm not sure this is the message we were going for with this podcast. And annoyingly, we've got to wrap up now, sir. What a tragic message to end up with.
I think it's been utterly joyful. I think
No, it
getting
has.
people in a room who've researched something in depth and asking them, I have to apologise because some very superficial questions about what are brilliant EPQs. It has to be said. I think the four that we've read and the presentations we've seen have been of an exceptional quality, and hopefully people listening have got a sense of them and a sense of how much work each of you has done. Would you recommend doing an EP? If
Yes.
students are listening lower down the school, the EPQ process, what you've got from it, should people do an EPQ?
Yes. I think if you do 3 A levels, I do 4 A levels, and it's a lot of work. But if you do 3 A levels, it's a brilliant opportunity for you to showcase your wider interests. Even if you're not looking at it from a university perspective, which is something we tell the external applicants on the induction days, is don't do it because the universities will often lower their requirements for you. That's just a byproduct of it. Do it because it shows you're interested, and do it because it will help you find a specialist subject.
That was more like it. That was much more on message.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you are PR, even on the podcast, it's in PR mode. Brilliant. Okay, I think we've got to round off because sadly we are running out of time. Thank you to my fantastic guests today. That was Reuben, Shane, Matthew and Tom, who've, as you say, given us some brilliant insights. Bit of a different episode today. We'll be back later this week with Mr. Samuels on Machiavelli, I hope. I hope I'm not tempting fate by mentioning that on the podcast. We'll have to just put them in a different order. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yes, and thank you to Mr. Till, of course, for being here. Thank you to our fantastic production team and putting up with how much demand I put on their time and demanding whether the studio is available. And, of course, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. Jenny Summers with an I, would be fantastic. Spotify, all the different places, Apple, find us there. Give us a comment, email us, tell us what you're thinking. Who do you want to be a next guest? Who do you want to, do you want to be on the panel? You don't have to be a sixth former either. We really want to bring this down to some of the younger years and see if we can get them involved and interested too.
Yeah.
So and also solve the clue, which I'm now going to put my head to and try and figure out.
3 clues so far. Big prize. Big prize
Big
for somebody.
prizes available. Absolutely.
Email
and,
them.
I think that is pretty much it. So thank you. Hope to see you and hear from you all soon, and that you'll keep listening and go to our back catalogue and enjoy that too.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hurrah.